Okay, here we go. Find your inner pirate, baby. We got another good one coming at you today. With finishing out the SEC preview, doing the SEC East, Georgia's division. They've been dominating this division over the years. Really been dominating college football over the years. So, gonna be a good one to get into. Break down all these teams. And yeah, just we're right here. It's football season. It's week one, boys and girls. Week one coming at you. And at the end of this pod, I will go ahead and give out a couple bets I've already placed for week one. Week zero didn't treat me so right. Wasn't so kind to your boy. I come out, I win the first bet of the year, Notre Dame first half. Just easy money. Just Notre Dame came out, did exactly what I thought they would with Sam Hartman leading the way. Just a pure domination of Navy, and really, Notre Dame's offensive line was the story. They just controlled things up front like I thought they would. And the first half bet was easy, and they ended up winning that game 42-3. Well, I couldn't ride that momentum into the evening games. We had New Mexico. I had them -7 against UMass. UMass's quarterback, Phenomenon, I think was his name, something like that. Whatever the case is, he was phenomenal. I couldn't do much with. New Mexico couldn't do much with the guy. Mobile guy, and UMass isn't terrible. I thought they were going to be terrible. I thought the Aggies could get them at home opening night, but that one did not come through. They lost that game outright by 2 touchdowns, I think. So never really was in position to cover -7. So that was a bad bet. One I heard on a podcast I listened to, and I decided to ride with it. But it is what it is. So that was a loss. And then the USC was a double loser. I took them -7.5 first quarter, thinking Lincoln Riley always comes out game one just blistering hot. And I figured, USC is going to get the ball twice in the first quarter at least, and they're going to score 2 touchdowns. It just didn't work out that way. And then I had them first half also -19.5, and they were only up 7 at halftime. So disappointing. I should have known better than to trust USC and their shitty defense. And also, the running clock rule is in effect. It works just like the NFL. No clock stoppage after a first down. And that kind of limited possessions, I think, in all these games. I think you might see some lower scoring games. I also think it could lead its way to upsets, The shorter the game, the greater possibility a weird outcome could happen. The short amount of possessions. You see that in the NFL a lot, and I think it's going to work its way into college this year. So there should be some upsets. And I don't think, we're going to talk about Georgia here, I don't think Georgia is just a shoo-in to go 13-0 to the playoff. I think they have an easy schedule, they really do. But I think they could stumble. I think everybody's vulnerable in college football. The transfer portal, you can never keep a full roster intact. Guys leaving early for the draft. Whatever the case is, it's not an easy job right now being a head coach in college football. So Georgia, they've dominated, like we said, the SEC East. This division's kind of been considered the weaker division in the SEC over the years. But there's some programs on the rise, like Tennessee. What a year they had last year in Kentucky, man. They always come up and give teams issues, and Mark Stoops had them headed in the right direction for a long time now. So it's good to see. Georgia won 17 straight games as the Bulldogs, and they're -125 to win the SEC this year, so you got to lay a little bit if you want to bet them. The winning machine doesn't seem to be slowing down anytime soon, does it? This is a program that recruits at an elite level, and Kirby Smart does a great job getting everybody bought in. They recruit so well. They're one of the few programs that doesn't have to use the transfer portal to find talent. I think Kirby's just done a tremendous job building his teams from the football out. And that means offensive, defensive lines where it all starts. You build your team from the football out. And I think teams aren't doing that as much these days as they used to. That's kind of the old school way of thinking. But man, you cannot argue with Georgia and the way Kirby's built this. He's really built it a lot like the old Alabama teams, Nick Saban's first iteration of Alabama teams, where there was ground and pound and it was kind of a quarterback game manager. But Stetson Bennett was a lot more than a game manager over the years. People don't realize how great of a college quarterback the guy really was, especially last year. He was super impressive, and I think he's kind of being slept on a little bit in the NFL. I think the Lions drafted him, if I'm remembering that correctly. But either way, I mean, what Georgia's done these last 2 years, winning 2 straight natties, just cannot say enough about the job they've done. And they don't do it with a lot of flashy skill players or the hot shot quarterback. They just go out and dominate big boys. They're built a lot like those Alabama teams. Offensively, this defense and all the NFL talent it possesses always takes the headlines of this Georgia team. But man, this offense was a top 5 unit last year, and they're gonna have to replace an elite offensive coordinator in Todd Monken as he goes to the Ravens. And Stetson Bennett, man, I talked about him. I think he's really good. Even though Carson Beck has a lot of promise, I think Stetson Bennett's going to be missed with his moxie, his poise, his experience. That's going to be missed from Georgia. There's no doubt. Monken in his own right will be tough to replace. I think he's one of the best offensive coordinators in the country, and not surprised that he's taken the jump to the NFL. I think he can really do some cool things up in the NFL. And the Ravens really do some cool things with Lamar Jackson. Mike Bobo comes back to Georgia to be the offensive coordinator. And there's been some injuries to this backfield, so I'm not sure who the starting running backs will be. But the offensive line was incredible last year. They returned 4 out of 5 starters. With the newcomer Ernest Green, has a lot of people excited in Athens about his potential. You got Brock Bowers, the best tight end in the country by far. He's going to be the leading passing target. But the wide receiver room looks to be solid. And you get Ladd McConkey, just has a knack for getting open, one of the better receivers in the country. And they got Missouri transfer Dominic Lovett to show up, and he should get a lot of run after leading the Tigers defense a year ago. Defensively, this defense is now the standard in college football. They have produced 19 draft picks the last 3 years, and they just continue to reload. Co-DC's Will Muschamp and Glenn Schumann have done a fantastic job getting these young players ready to play. Because it's rinse and repeat. It's go to the NFL and then bring on the next group. And this secondary has studs everywhere. But they're strongest at safety, led by Javon Bullard. Kamari Lassiter will replace Kelly Ringo as the team's top cornerback. Linebacker, they're in good hands with Smail Mondon and Jamon Dumas-Johnson leading the way. They lose the edge rusher Nolan Smith to the NFL, but in steps Chaz Chambliss. What a name. And it's next man up mentality on this Georgia defense. They lost Jordan Davis, then Jalen Carter, back-to-back years at D-tackle. And, they may not have an all-world replacement like Jalen Carter was for Jalen Carter, but Warren Brinson looks to be the guy in line, the star up front. This is a defensive line that is huge, size-wise, and they're just going to overwhelm the majority of their competition. To move the ball in this Georgia defense, you're going to have a great offensive line. Georgia, there you have it. Very manageable schedule. I don't think they're really going to be challenged till they go on the road to Tennessee. There will be a sleepwalk game along the way, but it's hard to know which one, like Missouri for them last year. It's just hard to imagine this Georgia team losing 2 games and not at least making the SEC championship. Tennessee, 16-1 to win the SEC, and what a year they had last year, huh? The Vols, man, they've had some tough years over the years, but Josh Heupel's come in, giving the Vols fan exactly what they've been needing, a winner. The win at home versus Bama really felt like a program-changing victory. And Hendon Hooker looked like he might bring home the Heisman last year. He just got injured versus South Carolina, and it was a bad upset loss. They were squarely in the playoff mix and just had a terrible performance versus the Gamecocks. But they're a fun team to watch with this explosive offense, and Heupel's really found his inner pirate over the years and is one of the best play callers in the country. And Tennessee's just one of those programs that college football's better when they're good. The Peyton Manning days, and now maybe Hendon Hooker and Heupel really propelled them to their next era here in the 2020s. Offensively, by any by many statistical measures, this was the top offense in college football last year. The offensive coordinator, Alex Golesh, he's off to be the head man at USF. And quarterback coach Joey Hazel will step into the offensive coordinator role this year. And I hope this Vols offense doesn't lose any of its magic, but some regression is almost certainly going to come when you replace your coordinator and quarterback. But everybody's excited about Joe Milton. And Milton has all the physical tools. He's got a rocket launcher for a right arm. It's just, does he have the poise? Does he have the touch needed to really be a great quarterback? You know, we don't see much of that at Michigan. We haven't seen a lot of Joe Milton. Does he have that? He played in the bowl game, beat Clemson last year, so he's got a lot of hype around him coming into the year. And he's got a good environment to play in at Tennessee. He should thrive, become his best version of himself. They're going to have to replace a couple of stud wide receivers, Jalen Hyatt and Cedric Tillman. But look for Bru McCoy to step in and become this team's wide receiver one. Highly touted recruit back in the day, Bru McCoy. This is a vertical offense, and I'm sure there's going to be some speedsters in that wide receiver room that we aren't aware of just yet. Make some big plays down the field. And this offensive line was good last year, but they're going to have to replace first-round pick Darnell Wright. The top running back and Jalen Wright is back, and I think they're going to want to run the ball a little bit more than they did last year. When you look at this defense, this is a defense that gave up 63 to South Carolina and 49 to Alabama. But it wasn't all bad. There were some good things to build off. Sometimes a team, and you just have such a high-powered offense like Tennessee had last year, you can't help but get into games, sometimes just get out of control for both defenses. Good offense is going to beat good defense in today's modern era of football. The defensive coordinator, Banks, he runs an aggressive system, and his scheme is really attacking. They want to get in the backfield, get tackles for losses. The front seven, solid. They led the SEC in tackle for losses last year, actually. And they have some good size, led by Roman Harrison. Aaron Beasley, he's back at linebacker. And he was the team leader in tackles last year, so you got to feel good. But they're really excited getting 4-year starter from BYU, Keenan Pili, in there in that linebacking room. He's going to finish his career off in Knoxville. The secondary has some experience coming back, but is it a good thing for a pass defense that wasn't good last year? Is it a good thing that they're all back? You know, this will never be a defensive first program under Heupel, but they need to be better than last year if their offense takes a step back. You know, if they want to remain one of the best in the country, you know, their defense is going to have to step up. And There's two ways to look at Tennessee in 2023. They caught lightning in a bottle of Hendon Hooker and a group of elite pass catchers, and it won't be repeatable. Or is Josh Heupel really building something special? And last year was just the beginning. I think it's somewhere in the middle, and they'll be hoping the SEC East is still winnable whenever they play Georgia at home November 18th. That they want to make sure they're still in position there, win that game, go to the SEC championship. That's kind of Tennessee's outlook for this year. Moving on to the Florida Gators, the Swamp Kings. This is a program that's suffered its first back-to-back losing season since 78-79. Long time. Meanwhile, rival Georgia's won back-to-back natties, and the Vols are now must-see TV. So Billy Napier faces pressure in year 2. Get things going in the right direction. Florida had a roller coaster season a year ago, beating Utah in the opener and then losing to Vanderbilt at the end of the year, and some other bad losses down the stretch. Napier cleaned house, bringing in new coordinators, and there's a ton of transfers, so he's looking to really flip the script this year. Is Billy Napier, and he made his money offensively, and he brings in a new offensive coordinator, Rob Sale. He's going to be promoted from the offensive line coach. And funny enough, the biggest issue with this offense is the O-line. So hopefully he can get those guys playing as a group. With Graham Mertz coming in, looking like the guy at quarterback, this line will need to perform better than it did last year, when Anthony Richardson really covered up a lot of mistakes with his scrambling ability. The wide receiver room looks to be pretty good. Look for Ricky Pearsall to be the big play guy. There seems to be some good depth at running back as well, with Trevor Etienne being a name to watch, being Travis's little brother. I'm sure he's a stud. So, young guys, see if he can get some touches this year. This defense, you bring in the Southern Miss defensive coordinator and Saban disciple, Austin Armstrong. There's some serious size up front on this D-line. Napier brought in some transfers up front after the run defense was a problem last year. Edge rusher Princely Umanamilian. Not saying that right at all. He's the main threat to get to the quarterback in this defense. Look for fellow edge rusher Tyreek Sapp to come into his own this year as well. At linebacker, they lost some talent, but Napier went and got an Ohio State transfer and some others to add some quality depth at the linebacker position. Jason Marshall Jr. is a corner that will be the leader of this secondary, and he's going to be looking to be the vocal leader. This is a defense that needs guys to step up. Remember a couple years ago, the Marco Wilson incident against LSU, where a guy on the Florida defense just was so frustrated with a play, he took his shoe off and threw it, and it cost the team the game with the penalty. So I think Florida, man, they need some leadership on this team. At back-to-back losing seasons, they need some dogs. I don't know. This is a talented team, but is the quarterback and O-line play going to be good enough against Georgia, some of the other SEC teams? Tough game Thursday night here in a couple days at Utah, start their season. This feels like an 8-4 team, and 4 losses would be looked at as a disappointment by Napier and many Gators fans, but avoiding a third straight season is really all the Gators should be focused on. South Carolina, they're 80-1 to win this conference, and there's a lot of optimism for the Gamecocks this year. Shane Beamer has people believing in him and in his program. He's going to try to ride some momentum into 2023. After beating Tennessee and Clemson at the end of the year, Spencer Rattler is back for another year. There's reasons to get excited. Rattler is coming into his 5th season. Can't believe it, man. And I still don't know what to think about the guy. He's He's very much a rhythm player. He goes through some hot and cold streaks. You saw the mega hot streak he went on at the end of the year. But I'm still not I'm not convinced that's him. I think he's somewhere in between his hot streak and his cold streak, somewhere in the middle. And he's got some receivers to throw to. All SEC star wide receiver Antwain Wells. He's back, and the tight end room gets a shot in the arm with Arkansas transfer Trey Knox. Really good player. The weakness of this offense, unfortunately, is the offensive line. They gave up a lot of pressures last year. Rattler doesn't have that escapability to avoid sacks. The running game was limited last year, and Rattler needs a good run game to take pressure off him. You don't want that guy dropping back all game. He can't see very well, and you want to get him moving out of the pocket. So, a lot of play action. Defensively, this was a bad defense last year. There's some experience, some size up front, but not enough playmakers. The linebacking unit is just okay, nothing real special. The secondary, led by Nick Emanuori, had to cover up for too long last year. That pass rush just wasn't getting home, and the secondary gave up a lot of yards as a result. So it was a long season, but it was because of poor pass rush. Under Shane Beamer, special teams is going to be a calling card of this program. We all know Beamer Ball. His dad, Frank Beamer, at Vautech, always had one of the best special team units on the field in the country. And Shane Beamer's no different. That's why he was the special teams coach at OU, and he's going to want to have a good unit as the third unit of this team. But with South Carolina this year, is the offense what we saw at the end of the year, or was it just a hot streak? Rattler needs to look like a guy that's played a lot of ball, because he has. It's time for him to lead this offense and him to make a name for himself for some draft stock purposes. This is a squad that I think will challenge the big boys, but they're also going to struggle to beat anybody. So I think they play a lot of close games this year, and they might be the biggest wild card in the SEC. We're going to move it on to Kentucky, the Wildcats, baby. 80-1 to win the SEC. And the Fighting Mark Stoops have had a bowl appearance for 7 straight years. That's nothing to laugh at a basketball school like Kentucky, man. This program's come a long way over the years with Mark Stoops in charge. And I guess the question is there another gear to get to? Stoops has made Kentucky football relevant, and their consistency should be praised. On the offense this year, they're bringing in Devin Leary. He comes from NC State and has a lot of folks excited. The offensive line just wasn't good enough a season ago. It led to a lot of inconsistencies with Will Levis. He even got injured. So it's going to need to be better. Stoops went into the portal to address some needs. Running back Chris Rodriguez, he's gone. And Vandy transfer running back Ray Davis. He figures to be the lead back. He ran for over 1,000 yards last year with Vandy. The wide receiver room has a lot of youth, but they were able to get their feet wet last year, so now maybe they're in position to succeed, really coming to their own as a unit, that wide receiver room. Defensively, this defense performed pretty well last year, just 19 points per game allowed. Mark Stoops knows how to coach these guys up, even though his brother Mike can't at all for the life of him. Mark Stoops knows how to coach defense, and they don't have the most talent over there, especially compared to the rest of the SEC. The biggest issue on defense is the lack of a consistent pass rush. Just like we were talking about. I'm not sure they have that edge presence. The secondary loses some bodies, but they added a Cincinnati transfer and Jonquise Hardaway, who started last year for the Bearcats. I wanted to take Kentucky's win total over, but the schedule is just far too tricky for my liking. I need to see a better offensive line, but if it looks serviceable, this will be a team I bet on a lot this year. They probably have an upset or two in them, and I think at the bare minimum, this is a team that goes bowling, pushes for another winning season under Mark Stoops. All right, moving it on to Missouri, the Tigers, 100-1. And it feels like a lifetime ago that Missouri was just joining the SEC and playing for SEC titles, winning this division. They've been very average since. And Coach Drink, he's a dork. There's no denying. He's been recruiting his butt off, but what a dork he is. I just want to get fired up playing for this guy. Just look at him. He's a dork. Still, though, there's been 0 winning seasons in his 3 years in Columbia. So even though he's a good recruiter, it's time to show something on the field. They bring in a new offensive coordinator, Kirby Moore, and he brings his pass-happy scheme with him. Comes from Fresno State. They lit the scoreboard up over the years with Jake Haener and company. There seems to be a quarterback battle on our hands here, but I expect Brady Cook to keep his job. Top wide receiver, Dominic Lovett, we mentioned him. He's off to Georgia, but there's plenty of talent on this offense. Luther Burden is a super recruit, 5-star, his second year, and he's going to be looking to get the ball in his hands as much as possible. Mookie Cooper is another good receiver. And then you have the OU transfer, Theo Weiss. He should add another key weapon to this offense. And this offensive line needs to find their footing. They allowed too many negative plays a season ago. They need to be a better rushing attack to take pressure off the quarterback. On defense, the defense was very good last year. They ranked 4th in total defense in the SEC, and they might have slowed down that Georgia offense more than anybody did a season ago. They'll look to keep pressure on opposing quarterbacks. Darius Robinson and Arizona State transfer Joe Moore looking to become a force on the edge. The linebackers seem solid, and they're consistently blowing plays up in the backfield. The secondary has a lot of experience and could be a strength of this defense. Chris Abrams-Draine is a name to remember and has a lot of NFL potential. He had 14 pass breakups in 2022. So, Missouri, they're going to go as far as their quarterback and O-line will take them, just like all these teams. Can they break through? Can they get to 7 or 8 wins after being stuck on 6-6? Their defense will keep them in most games, but they need more consistency on offense. They have a really fun non-conference game versus former Big 12 rival Kansas State, and that should give us a good feel for just how good this Tigers team can be. And so, when we move on to Vanderbilt, I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on Vanderbilt. They already played a game. They're 100 to win the conference. They're the cellar dwellers of the conference, and I expect them to be on the bottom of the standings again. And I really don't have much else to say about Vandy. They're a baseball school. It's the only reason they're in this conference, that and academics. No point in talking about their football program. They're terrible. I do want to finish the podcast out, go over a couple bets I made already for this week. We got SMU minus 20 this week. Love it. Love SMU minus 20. I got who else? We bet against Virginia. You know what? Maybe I'll save my picks for the Friday pod with the Missile when we do Big 12, and we'll see if he has any picks as well. I'm sure he does. So that's going to be it for the SEC East, guys. It was a fun one, and we'll be back